But you know, I think being drawn to ritual is also why shows like Survivor, or any competition reality show we're drawn to. The drama is something we're drawn to, but also there's a very specific, you know, repeatable, entrenched ritual to all of those competition shows. You know, The Bachelorette and even Drag Race that we are drawn to, and I think people are more drawn to it for that reason than they realize.
Hi, gay. I'm PJ Brescia, they, them pronouns, your host of the BabyGay podcast and the founder of the BabyGay community, celebrating the coming out process through storytelling, advocacy, and togetherness. I came out later in life and I knew nothing about queer culture. I'm still not an expert, so let's go on a journey of self-discovery together with amazing guests, diverse coming out stories, LGBTQI plus history, and everything in between.
This is the BabyGay podcast. Coming out looks good on you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the BabyGay podcast. I'm your host, PJ Brescia, they, them, and today we are here at the historic Black Cat in Silver Lake, California, and we have a very special guest, political analyst, comedian, and this year, 2025's Out100 Honoree, Ryan Basham.
Oh, me?
That's you.
Oh my gosh.
Yay.
Well, yeah, I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you
for
so
having me.
much for coming.
Yeah.
Really, really appreciate it.
I just am marveling at your hair.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, I was born with it. You know,
yeah.
That's all I could say.
My mom had hair like this, and she used to say that she started going gray the day I was born. And when I was little, I really thought that was true, so I felt guilty. Mm-hmm. But she would take me to the salon with her and have them match her hair color to mine.
Okay.
So, you know.
And when were you a kid, what color was your hair?
It was a brighter red than this, because, you know, redheads kind of either fade to sherbet, which I won't, or darker redheads fade to brown very slowly. Okay. So I'm kind of in the latter stages of fading to brown. So at some point, I'm going to have to color.
It's amazing.
Well, thanks. Well, but when you compare it to like what it looked like when I was a kid,
yeah,
it's kind of night and day. But
yeah,
it's one of those things like, you know, woulda, coulda, shoulda, wish I had this, wish I had that, you know.
You know, everyone always wishes they have what other people have.
Yes. Yeah, grass is always greener.
Always greener. Thank you for being here.
Of course. I mean, I'll get up at 8 a.m. for anybody. No, lies. Just you. Just you.
Thank you. Yes, so I sense since we were coordinating, you're not a morning person?
I am not a morning person. Okay. I really try to live with, you know, there's studies that say that night owls are more intelligent. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. Also, people who curse are more intelligent. I'm like, yeah, that's true. That's got to be true. So even if it's not really true, I'm going to believe it.
What time do you go to bed, roughly?
Oh. I intend to go to bed by 1 or 1:30. That's not always what happens.
That's not that bad.
Well, it's really not always what happens. Okay. Like sometimes I go to bed at 4.
Yeah.
Which is like, I'm like on though. I'm like, what are the things I can work on, you know?
Well, have you heard about the 4 o'clock magic hour?
Yes, I have. Which would work for me if it, you know, like I know people wake up at that time or whatever to get some time in or whatever. I need to be continuously asleep for at least 8 hours. And so I can't do that.
Yeah.
Get up in the middle of the night and have a creative, magical hour. Yeah, that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah. That's so my brother-in-law is one that also, I don't know if he can attest to it. So he is one of these, he's my mentor. He's a genius. Aww. And he wakes up at like 3:30 in the morning.
No, absolutely not.
And is fully at work by 4. And it's just, I mean, I've done it in the past. We went on this mini writing retreat and I kind of, I followed his schedule. So the earliest I could get up was 5. So I got up at 5 and we would start, you know, have some coffee and start writing. But there is something about that early morning that I do see the magicalness to it where everyone's asleep. It feels like you have stolen time. Like it just, there is something about it. I too am, I think, more awake and alive at night. So like I have a hard time going to bed before midnight. So it just doesn't, because like he goes to bed at like 9 o'clock.
Jesus.
And I just can't.
Never.
I can't.
No.
Like
no. I used to be in the world of like self-help, personal development, workshop-y stuff. I was going to be a trainer in that, but that's a whole other story. Yeah. But it was normal to have a day that ended at like midnight or 1 a.m. and then have to be up by 6 or 7 because the next day, because each day is so big. Yeah. There's so much to do. And for a few days at a time, because everything is moving and because it's exciting, I can tolerate that.
Yeah.
But then I crash for a day or two, like if I'm up at 3, I'm like Karen Walker from Will and Grace. Like if I'm up at 3, it's because I haven't been to bed yet.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right,
It's
right,
not because I woke up early.
Right.
That doesn't happen.
Right. Okay. Well, that leads me to a question. Okay. So you were a political advisor to Biden.
The 2020 Biden campaign, yes.
That's incredible.
I did similar stuff for the Harris campaign, but they weren't handing out advisor titles like they were in 2020.
Okay.
I was like, whatever, guys. But yeah, it was honestly, it was in part I had access to getting to do that because it was the pandemic, and so everything was through Zoom. And so as soon as the news broke of who the LGBTQ coalitions director was in 2020, we had mutual friends on Facebook, and so I hit him up, and then it kind of snowballed from there.
Wow. That's incredible.
It was so fun. It's cool. Yeah, I forget how substantial and consequential that is.
Yeah.
Because it's just a thing that I did. Everything. I feel like everything always feels like not a big deal for me that other people think, oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to hear more about that firstly,
Okay, cool.
But it reminded going to the sleep connection. Watching Kamala, I was so excited, but I did have a moment where I just felt how Kamala / whoever would be in that position, how do they physically maintain that daunting of a schedule?
Yeah. And if there's somebody who really needs rest, how do they not make it look like they really need rest? Because there's something to, it needs to look like you're, going 25 hours a day, optics wise. But I remember in 2016, reading somewhere, someone had asked Hillary Clinton that version of that question. She said, I have the very good fortune of being able to sleep wherever and whenever I want. And so, she could get a good long nap in on the plane from, spot to spot. And that is not true for me. I'm a light sleeper. If I have stuff going on, it's hard for me to turn off. I need like pharmacological intervention if I'm going to go to sleep. Well, generally anytime, but especially in the middle of the day.
Like, are they getting IVs and are they getting all that?
I mean, at least one serious presidential candidate must have.
Yeah.
Must have.
Right.
But, they try to keep those things on the DL because these are normal human things to need when you're doing something extraordinary.
Yeah.
But, once you become that high level of a public figure, a couple things happen. First, you become somebody's enemy for the rest of your life, no matter what happens, whether you win or lose, whether you disappear to a private life afterward. But the other thing that happens is everything you do is under such scrutiny, and people might, like you and I and most Americans could probably have a conversation about sleep and be like, yeah, it's hard to, live without getting enough sleep every night. But most of those same people will judge a presidential candidate for, visibly getting 8 or 9 hours of sleep a night, and hold that against them. And so, part of the problem we have in our politics is that we have created a culture where just deciding to run is such a burden that many of our best people who might be great leaders won't do it. We have ourselves to blame if we ever complain about who our politicians are.
Do you think that'll ever change?
Well, I would like to believe that we are kind of in the vast middle of an evolutionary jump as a species. And if that's true, I think it will. But it might be a very long time,
Tell us more about this.
Well, I watch a lot of Star Trek.
Okay.
And I also think there's a line from the movie / book Contact where Jodie Foster's character basically asks, well, the little girl version, asks her dad if, I think it's a little girl version. Anyway, asked her dad about, is there life elsewhere? And he goes, if there isn't, that's an awfully big waste of space. And when you think about, like, if we take the known size of the universe, which is not all of it, and shrink it down to the size of our solar system, the Earth becomes a grain of sand size. And then all of us are clinging to that tiny little grain of sand, hurling through space. And there are billions of stars that we know about, and we can't even see the edges of the universe. If that's true, we can't be the only ones.
Right.
And if that's true, and our planet is relatively young compared to some others, either we have hit a ceiling, which seems unlikely, or we've already maxed out, we're redlining, we're going to just die off anyway because that's how it is, or we have to grow in some major way. And I have to believe that we grow and change in some major way. We've done it before. We've had evolutionary leaps forward. So, who's to say that we couldn't or wouldn't have another?
When would you say the most recent evolutionary leap forward was?
Something that I point to is the drastic social change we had when the Industrial Revolution came around. There have been other, anthropological big leaps, like thousands of years ago. But I think our society changed so much when we went from a more agrarian to an industrial society, and we tolerated that change and adapted to it. And humans are not really built to change that quickly. And if we can do that, we can do that again in some other way in our culture. I hope.
I don't want to get political, but I feel like we have to a little bit. But right now there is so much angst and tension that it's just inevitable. Something has to change because there's too much anxiety. Like it has to go somewhere. Yeah,
there's got to be a pressure valve.
Yes.
Something has to change. Well, so I said, humans aren't built to change that quickly regarding the Industrial Revolution, but generally we're built to be adaptable. I think what we're up against right now is that as mammals, we evolved to see anything that is unfamiliar as a potential threat, which is why I give a lot of grace to people who are intolerant in some way or whatever, because we are all literally built to be intolerant. And I think the situation we're in right now, where things are changing more quickly than we are built to adapt to, and B, we are so exposed to different in a way that as a species we haven't before. There is a lot of tension, there is a lot of pressure, and that does have to go somewhere. But then I think about those cheesy adages like pressure creates diamonds. I think either this leads to something useful or it just tears us apart and destroys it. And based on results up until now, our species has been able to change as opposed to just disappearing altogether. That's what I hope.
Yeah.
But I think I also I say a lot, we are not going to live to see all the changes we wish to see. Our job is not to check the box. Our job is to make some progress so that generations after us can pick up that ball where we left off and keep going. Many Christians since the dawn of Christianity have believed that they are right on top of the end of times. Like it's just about to happen, guys. Rapture any minute.
Right.
And that has yet to happen over 2,000 years.
Is today one of the rapture days, supposedly? Or
I don't know. If it is, pardon me, I feel the same way about the rapture that I do with the zombie apocalypse. I kind of want to be there to see what happens,
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know if there's a special rapture day or not, but for some Christians, every day.
Right. I mean, this just reminds me going back to 2020 when we were in lockdown and it felt like endless and we're never going to return to what we know as life pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
And now moving forward in 2025, it almost feels like it never happened in a sense. And it's, I don't know. I just feel, just to your point, we can evolve and adapt and our reality becomes the new normal. You seem like a positive person. I like to stay positive too.
Yeah.
And I do feel like we are being put into this place where something does have to change. And I personally, in my life, like I've made some major changes and taken the leap and dove into the unknown. I mean, I think that's also like coming out. It's like, though all of those major change moments in my life have turned out to be incredible. Obviously, they've been scary and they've caused some emotional responses for me. But at the end of the day, it really has been incredible growth. And I think growth comes through these hard periods of change. Yeah,
things will change, and we get to choose whether or not it happens to us or we make it be a thing that's happening for us. People who like to go back to the way things were don't appreciate that will never happen. That's just not possible. We are going to experience change. It will test our ability to tolerate change. It will give us an opportunity to make the most of it. But this is not the first time in American history where we've had this much of what feels like tipping point. The rise of authoritarianism around the globe, like we're experiencing now, happened leading up into the, World War I and II, period of time. So that's a thing that happened then. And then, we go back to the Civil War. We have had major upheaval in this country that feels like, how could we survive this as a nation? this must be the end. And we've gotten through it, you know? So aside from the fact that I think there's plenty of reason to be optimistic, how does it serve me to be pessimistic? You know, in what way? I mean, does the only thing I can think of is if I remain pessimistic, that means if I turn out to be right, I have the validation of having been right. You know, I'm looking for that validation, and that's not what's most important to me.
I also believe, I believe the power of the mind is so important. And that one, I think to your point, it's the pessimistic attitude. It's just self-soothing. It feels good to be this negative.
Yeah.
Everything's horrible, negative. And then it takes a little bit more effort to be in the positive space. But I do feel like you can control the outcome in a sense. And
yeah. Well, if nothing else, you can change how you experience it.
Yeah.
And we are drawn to feeling put upon and feeling struggle. Like we trade our struggle as currency. Like in some form or fashion, we either overtly or, you know, discreetly compare our struggle to everybody else's, and there's something desirable about having the most.
Let's go to the beginning. Where are you from? All that. How's childhood? Give me your trauma.
I grew up in a smallish town in Northeast Tennessee. That corner of Tennessee is the whitest and poorest part of Tennessee. I, in a way, had a good fortune because there's a Fortune 100 company, chemical company that's based in my hometown. And because it's a massive chemical company, there are lots of highly educated people who they basically import to my hometown. So, and there was one high school within the city limits. So I went to a high school that was better funded than most for the region. But it was all the kids together. It was the destitutely poor kids and the redneck kids and the racist kids. And then also these kids who come from educated parents and are, you know, ethnically and culturally diverse all together in one group. So that was a blessing in a way, but it certainly wasn't enough to obscure attention to me because I wasn't the only gay in the village, but it felt like that. And I was certainly the most openly different. I think, well, let me say this. Two things are the things that I think defined my childhood. One being that my mom was an alcoholic, and I don't think I have clear memories of her being sober, and the way that just tore apart my nuclear family over years, and that there's trauma that my dad still carries with him, my brother still carries with him from that. I do, of course. And the other thing is, you know, I told one person in 7th grade that I thought I was bi because I was on the Buy Now Gay Later plan. And the next day everybody knew. So that bubble got popped for me, which in a way I guess was a blessing, but that was 7th grade. And so at home, I had this kind of chaotic situation. And then at school, I had this kind of chaotic situation. And so, you know, my dad left my mom when I was graduating from high school. He probably should have done it a year sooner. And I have a younger brother. So I stayed in town and went to like the university next door so that I could be there for my brother until he was old enough to drive. And the moment he got his driver's license, so that he could be free of whatever, I moved to LA. And so, you know, I knew that I needed to get out of that tiny place in order to be who I wanted to be and who I needed to be. And so I did it as soon as I felt like my brother would be able to fend for himself.
That's incredible.
Well, thanks. I appreciate, you know, my brother and I are like very different people in a lot of ways, but we survived a lot together. So we have a bond that is not really describable. And I don't know that we would have if it weren't for all that.
What's your relationship like now?
We are very close. Our worldviews are very similar. He is almost 3 years younger. And I think his chronic bugaboos, I've never used that phrase before, but I think I like it, are different than mine.
Can you, what does that mean exactly?
So like, you know, the things that we all have things that we keep finding new ways to be held back by. That's just a part of being human. We all like to think, oh, I've learned this lesson, let me move on to a different lesson. But really, most of the time, we just find new ways to learn the same lessons. And my set of those things is somewhat different than his. There's a Venn diagram overlap, but he is very chill, and he is way less bothered by other people's opinions of him, and whether or not he's attractive to the people he's attracted to. He's not bothered by any of that. He's just so chill. That's how he grew up. That's how he responded to the environment we lived in. I am not those things. My adult life is a unending journey and unwinding, and I can both look in the mirror and go, you know what? I'm in better shape than the average gay, and go, there's no way I'm nearly in good enough shape to have my headless torso on Grindr. You know, those two thoughts can happen simultaneously. That's not something my brother deals with at all.
Is your brother gay?
My brother's not gay. In fact, he was on the football team, and my high school's football team was best or second best in the state, which is a big deal. And he had a whole life plan. He was going to do what's called walking on to the team at University of Tennessee. Walking on is like when you're not good enough to be one of the first string players, but you get to be a bench warmer. And that was, he was going to, and that you can parlay that, like you can have an entire life based around being on the football team at the University of Tennessee. But during the last game of his senior year, he tore his ACL, which eliminated that possibility for him. So he spent his 20s figuring out who he was and what his life was because he could no longer play football. So that's his growing up. Mine was very, under a magnifying glass because I'm gay and in the theater department, but my theater teacher hated me. So we had very different, adolescence, we had different puberties, different formative years.
I can see the plight of someone that's young and queer and young and straight, and there's different. I mean, have you read the Velvet Rage?
No, I never have.
Okay,
I really
you should read it. I mean, it just kind of highlights, and I can see it in myself. And actually, my sister reflected this to me recently. I was not chill either. I was very concerned about how people thought about me, and I would try to be the best at whatever I was doing. And she just said recently, she's like, oh, you didn't do those sports because you weren't going to be excellent at them. And that was like, oh yeah, right. That's true. Like I was horrible at team sports. I was horrible at ball sports.
Yeah.
So I stuck with swimming, and I was really good at swimming. So great swimmer. And it's that same.
I hate you for that, by the way, because you went into your 20s having a swimmer's body. Fuck you.
Well, listen. I did not. I stopped before college. I was going to swim in college, and I was so burnt out, and I just stopped. So I just drank through college and changed everything. So yeah, I did not go into I didn't have that swimmer's body, but I will say kind of, I did lean into trying to just show how incredible I was, and let's not focus on anything that was potentially queer leaning. And that seems to be like when you're young and straight. I mean, these are generalizations, obviously, but you don't have that anxiety within you, and it's like you don't care what people think because you don't have nothing to be. You're in the norm. You're in what society wants you to be. So there's nothing to be concerned about.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, it also sounds like he was a star athlete.
Well, yeah.
So.
And if you're in a small town in the South, being on the football team is the highest possible place on the pecking order socially.
Right.
He was also very charismatic, and so he floated through school. I don't know that he passed classes that he probably shouldn't have, but I think he did. I did too, but for different reasons. I think it was a sympathy thing. But yeah, he had in that way he had a very charmed childhood. But today he's kind of, his dual personality is this charmed public life and the stuff we've dealt with at home that impacts his psyche on a personal, private level as well. So, and I was tightly wound and wanted to be great at everything. And I actually came in second or third for things so many times that I kind of have built this complex now that I'm always the bridesmaid, never the bride. And so when I get accolades of any kind, that feels like an exception to the rule, which is so weird because I don't think I should be thinking about it that way, but it is something that I get to dance with.
Is it kind of this feeling like, oh, it's not that big of a, like you received the accolade and it's now not a big deal? When,
yes.
When you didn't have it, it was the biggest deal?
Yes. And when I receive it, great. I'll be my Southern modesty, which is genuine, but when I don't get it, it means something about my place in the universe. It's foundational, fundamental.
I can, just like when it's like, oh, I get it. It's like, oh, well, this doesn't mean as much now because I get it. And like, it's about just empowering oneself and just recognizing that we do deserve it. And it does still mean a lot that we have it. And I think it's something that queer people struggle with often, and it's just this lack of feeling self-acceptance and self-love, and just we need to continually heal through this. And that's, I think, part of sharing this. That's part of this podcast, is to kind of show, like, even really successful queer people are still struggling with the things that the young queer child who is seeing themselves othered in the world is still working through. So
yeah, and actually that kind of reminded me of the thing that I forgot earlier. It's a practice.
Yeah.
It's not, there's no destination here. It's a practice that we get to embrace and be in for the rest of our lives if we choose, and we have that option. We can choose that. What I was thinking about earlier, it's the same thing, is like when it comes to things like physical stuff, like how my hair is today, or that my blemish that I got, needed some help with earlier, whatever. Every time I leave the house with something I know isn't perfect, like a shirt that I don't look great in or whatever, every little thing, it's a practice for me to leave the house anyway. And this year I have been going out for walks. I live off of Sunset, so I'm not discreet where I live, with hair that I haven't even bothered to touch. I have a cowlick in the back, whatever. And that is a practice. It means something that I did that. That's diffusing my natural impulse,
where are your parents still with us?
My mom passed when I was 20. So thank you. People say that a lot. And I used to, I'm not sorry, because she was my idol. I worshiped my mom. So much of me is her. There's a line from Wicked about that, kind of like that. And that at the same time, alcoholism had taken her to the point of no return several years before she died. And so when she did pass, even her mom was ready for her to die. She did this thing where she ended up in the emergency room a few times, and we thought, well, this is it. And the last time that happened, when she actually did end up passing, it looked like she was going to pull through again. And her mom, I don't think I'll ever forget this. Her mom, my grandmother, said, "Not this, I can't take this anymore." So, she was an incredible, dynamic, talented, charismatic person who could work a room like nobody's business, but also an alcoholic. And that became eventually the defining part of her identity. And so I don't wish she was still alive. I'm not sorry she's dead, because I would not want her to be alive as who she would be today. It could not have been that she got her act together by then. It was too late. She was too far into alcoholism. She would never get sober. I see a lot of gay men in particular having incredible adult relationships with their mothers. I know many gay men who, regularly they're on Instagram is spending time with their mom where they grew up, or on a trip, or their mom came here to, be a part of their LA life regularly. So I do miss that. I have one parent, and he's the one who wasn't quite as enthusiastic about the things I'm up to as she was. But we have a good relationship, but I do kind of lament in the abstract not having a mother figure like that. But I would change nothing about what, my mom passing. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I have a dead mom too. So I can really relate to that.
Oh my gosh. How long has she been passed?
So next year will be 20 years.
Same.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
She died in 2006?
One of the, right around
there.
Yeah. She passed. So I'm a huge Spice Girls fan.
Okay.
And she passed during the period where they were doing their reunion world tour, and they had 2 nights in LA, and I had tickets to the first one. But then my mom passed, and her funeral ended up being on the day between those 2 dates, and her burial was the day after the second date. So essentially she died just in time to prevent me from going to the Spice Girls concert, which is something I'd been looking forward to since I was tiny. But I still find that funny, because my mom would have found that funny. Like, I gotcha. Yeah. Like I chuckle about that.
Right.
Yeah. And fast forward to 2019, I went to London and saw them live. Anyway, so it worked out okay.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It all works out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a little bit of a different experience, and I'll just say that it was sudden and tragic, but even in that time, and I wasn't spiritual then, I still had this feeling like everything was too weirdly perfect in how it happened, that it was meant to be.
Yeah.
And while this fucking sucks for me, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And so I've never had that, why me? Like, this sucks. Even though, like, I get that. I understand it. And, like, going to your point, yeah, I would love to, like, I see all these, and also going back to the Velvet Rates, there is something about gays and their moms, so it's in there. You should read it again. You read the book.
I may or may not be ADHD and struggle to finish a book.
Listen, you can listen to it.
You'd think that'd be a solution.
Yeah. I actually have a hard time listening to books too, because I do it when I'm driving, and then it's like, I'm double. Anyways, I do understand. Do you find motherly mentors in women in your career, or like have you found them in other places?
I don't know that I have anymore, but I did for several years into adulthood have women in my life that there was a nurturing component to our relationship. The one that sticks out the most to me is a woman named Jean Petke, who who I ended up meeting through one of my peers, like who is kind of in a mentor-y relationship with her. And that friend and a couple other people and Jean got together every week for many, many, many years. It was when Jean has also passed. And when she was alive, we referred to each other as friends because that was the most practical thing, but we had a much deeper bond than that. I have had reason to think maybe I'll move across the country in the last few years, here and there. But I think about what would I keep, what would I throw away? But I have mementos from my relationship with her that, come hell or high water, will go with me wherever I go until the end of time.
Mm-hmm.
But I also do feel like my mom's passing was part of the grand design. And the other thing that I circle back to since she's passed is that I used to be a skeptic of like mediums and stuff like that until my mom died. And then within the first few months of her passing, things happened that were so unreal that it's hard for me to find the rational explanation for. So whether it's rational or not, I choose to believe she is showing me she was there.
I have that very much. Like I ignored her death for 10 years. So at 27, mine was kind of linked with coming out in the sense that like all the things I was running from in my life, my mom's death, my sexuality, my creative pursuits, all were like, nope, you're going to deal with this now. You can run for 10 years, you marathon runner, but you're going to deal with it now.
Yeah.
And so at that point, it was in this like super raw restarting life period, and it's when I kind of opened myself up to my mom from above, I will say, and I now do feel like I have like a two-way conversation with her like daily.
I have a whole long story about that, but we don't have to get into it. But one of my best friends and I are in the Dead Moms Club.
Do you feel like you're like the dead parent Sherpa now with anyone that loses a parent?
Yes,
me too.
Because two things. So you said I'm sorry earlier when I mentioned that she'd passed, which is I respond to that in a weird way because I'm not. Anytime I tell somebody my mom is dead, I then have to manage their reaction to it.
Right.
What's almost always happening is somewhere, subconsciously or consciously, they're thinking about losing their parent, whether they've already passed or not, but usually because their parents are still alive. Actually, I take that back. Most people with dead parents are like, this is funny. But people whose parents are still alive have a very different attitude about it.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I don't mention my mom has passed unless I absolutely have to, just because I don't want to have to manage someone else's emotional experience when I tell them my mom is dead. Like, I'm fine. I know you got a moment. And because I care about people and like to hold space for people, I will do this. But I don't always want to. You know what I mean? But I assume there are some people with dead parents who are looking for that I'm so sorry sympathy. Maybe there are, maybe there aren't. I don't know, but it's not what I need. It's not what I want. In fact, it's what I'd rather not have.
Yeah. I mean, I can relate. It's like when I went to college. I mean, granted, I think I was in a different state, but I was like, I didn't want to bring it up because I didn't want to feel sympathy from people.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, I'm good. Like, I don't need your sympathy. So like, I think that's similar.
Well, when people say I'm so sorry, and then I say to you what I said earlier, which was I'm not.
Right.
That becomes like it's like blows people back on their heels.
Right.
They're like, oh my God, what? And it takes them a moment to catch up with what I've just said. Not always, but many times, and much of the time. So even that is something I have to manage. In fact, there are times when I've said, oh, I'm not, thanks, because I wanted to cut off the emotional experience and be like, I said it in a way that was an emotional block as opposed to just responding honestly, because I can't always go there.
Yes, but I will say, out to play the devil's advocate, I
Do
feel
it.
like you do, just saying that, that's a spicy response.
Yes.
So
Well, sometimes it's just me being honest, but yeah, it is a
like,
spicy
if you really wanted to kind of just power through, be like, thank you, next. Like, just not even addressing.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to get better at just doing that. There's no right way to respond to somebody when
No.
they say their parent is dead.
No.
I don't want anybody to walk away from this conversation thinking, oh God, I shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
Yeah.
It's rarely not a little bit awkward to talk about. And it is what it is.
It is what it is. And I remember, like, during that period of loss when I would get the weirdest responses from people, and you're just like, what? But like, it's people get really awkward about death, and there is no right answer.
Yeah. Well, death is a part of life.
Yeah.
Sometimes when someone like posts on social media that their parent has passed, I will send them a DM that says, A, it will get better, but B, when a parent passes, it opens up a part of your personality and identity that you could not have designed on your own because it was already taken up by your living parent. And one of the gifts people leave us when they pass is, initially it feels like a void to many people, but they leave us this part of our identity and worldview and personality that we get to redefine for ourselves. And I think that's incredible. And I'm grateful to my mom for giving me that.
I can concur.
Oh my gosh.
And I have controversial thoughts that I'm not going to, I was late to do the processing of it. And now I've processed it over the past 8 years and do feel where I've gone through the journey of pedestalizing my mom and she could do no wrong, and then kind of going to angry at my mom for the things that she did while I was young and kind of maybe swayed how my trajectory turned out. And now I'm just at this place of, my mom was amazing. She had her greatness, her faults. She was awesome. But it's less about what would she want. I'm doing this for my mom. Like, everything is for my mom. And now it's for me. Now I'm doing everything for me.
Yeah.
Are you living for her or are you living for yourself?
Yeah, I have sympathy for people who appear to be living for a dead person.
Yeah.
I'm sure it feels right to them, I guess, or whatever, but it just seems sad to me.
Yeah.
It feels like choosing to be stuck in the past in a way. There are things that, like, if I ever win an Oscar, say, I will mention my mom in my speech, probably in a funny way. And that's a thing that I would do both for me and for her. But I am not like, oh, I got to do this and that for my mom, or, you'll never catch me accomplishing something major and go, this is something I only did because, something I did to honor my mom. I mean, fortunately though, everything I want to accomplish is something that she would be proud of. So it's like, that's easy for me. Maybe it's a throwaway easy, but yeah, it just makes me sad to see people who appear to be hung up on a dead person, especially if it's been years.
It's almost like the safer road.
Yes.
And the scarier, harder road is, what do I want?
Yes.
What am I living for?
Yes.
What is my identity?
Yeah. And can I let go of however that person was a part of my identity?
Yeah. Going to now you're
in lighter news.
Yeah, in lighter news. Well, I do want to talk about your coming out. Like, did you ever come out to your mom, or tell me about your coming out journey?
When I told somebody in 7th grade that I thought I was bisexual, and then everybody else knew the day after. My parents told me, after all that was out in the air, that they first had a conversation about the possibility of me being gay when I was 4. And for a while, apparently, my mom blamed my dad for not taking me out in the backyard and throwing a football. And ironically, my dad came around way before my mom. Although I think it makes sense in a way because my dad was not religious and my mom was. But I'm very fortunate that my parents I never saw hardship because of my parents' response to me coming out, which is why perhaps I don't exactly remember coming out to my mom. I kind of remember coming out to my dad, but it was kind of an in-passing thing that was about something else. Because by then I was openly living a gay life at school.
Starting when?
7th grade, because I didn't have a choice.
Really? Wow.
I did not appreciate fully until I had lived in LA for several years how much trauma I carried by being, one of the most visible gay in a small town in the South. And to this day, I feel a lot of sympathy for people who never have lived in a major city, because there was an accumulated baggage that is not necessarily obvious because of my coming out experience or whatever. But there's something about living in a major city when you've lived like that you just can't replicate. So when I go back, I rarely do, but when I do, I look around and I see a world every day when I'm back there. I see a world where me being openly gay would be a more hostile experience, aside from my dad, who is alive and still lives there. And, you know, for that reason, I have a hard time hearing people say, well, it's a great place to raise a kid. And because I want to say, well, it depends on who your kid is. Mm-hmm. But I really, the coming out in my family thing was such a non-event, because it was a thing that was discussed even before I think my first clue was when The Little Mermaid came out. I was really interested in the mermen when they swim by, because they had pecs, no nipples though, I think, which is weird. And I don't know how old I was, but that was older than 4. And that's my first memory of that. And I can't say that I have any specific memories of coming out to my parents or anybody else in my family, because, like I said, everybody kind of already knew.
So you were outed by a classmate.
Yes.
And then your parents found out because classmates told their parents, and it's like, how did they find out?
It was, I think, I've never actually asked them that. I think because they already were pretty sure when I was much younger, I don't know if there was a single inciting incident. I remember in 8th grade, there was a parent-teacher conference between my parents and the school guidance counselor and a couple of my teachers. And one of my teachers, one of the more butch, masculine men of my teachers, he apparently in this parent-teacher conference broke down and cried a bit because he did not want me to get treated as the gay in class. And he saw that was happening, and that was in 8th grade. So I suppose by the time that parent-teacher conference happened, it was all already out there. Yeah. But I hadn't necessarily talked openly about it with my parents at that point, but it was already a known thing. And my parents were mostly focused on the hardship that I would face, not having a problem with me being gay. Except, well, it did take my mom a second to come around, but her way of coming around to it was not like, because she came from a more religious background, and she also came from a keeping up with appearances background. But her road to fully accepting me as a queer person was in the era of like Queer Eye and Will and Grace. And so her way to it, she found a place where it was like cool to have a gay son that she could take shopping with her and stuff like that. That was her pathway.
Wow.
Isn't that something?
That is something.
I mean, she was right.
Right. Well, obviously, but it's almost like weaponizing it in a little bit.
In a way, yeah.
So your mom was religious. What was she?
United Methodist.
Okay.
I really don't know quite how to describe the kind of religious she was. She was United Methodist. Her parents raised her in the church. I came up in the church. I did Sunday school and stuff like that. But I very early on was like, wait a second. If the Bible says this about the gays, and I'm a gay, what else is not accurate? So that, my attachment to Christianity being correct dissolved very early on in my self-awareness journey, because it's like a house of cards. When one thing turns out to be indelibly, absolutely is not right, wrong or whatever about this orthodoxy, well, then that puts everything else into doubt. And that made it very easy for me to become a spiritual, not religious person and not carry around religious baggage about being queer, And I don't know why. I have friends who go to church today, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing this? I have gays who go to that Catholic church in Santa Monica, like Catholics in particular, Catholic gays in particular. What?
That was me.
Really?
That was me. So I was going to ask you, so like, is it the same, gays, you're going to hell, yada, yada? But
you know what people used to say that still grinds my gears to this day is, because Christians think this is a kind thing to say, hate the sin, love the sinner. I'm not a violent person, but if someone said that to me today, I would feel so compelled to punch them in the face, which is not normally my reaction to anything. But like, that is such an awful thing to say to somebody. They think it's kind, but it's actually really not just condescending. It's kind of, or even demoralizing. It's it inspires deterioration of that person's sense of self. So to me, that's an unacceptable thing to say. Like if you're saying that and you think you're being, kind, you need to do better.
I'm no longer, I'm now spiritual. I'm not religious. I completely, everything that you say, but like it is, I was going to the Catholic church in West Hollywood on Holloway Drive, which is just full of gay people.
Yeah.
And I was what brought me back was the ritual. It was in my coming out. It was in my finding my connection with my mom again, who was very Catholic, driving that Catholic train. And it was just really about just feeling her presence there. But then things happened and I was like no longer feeling good to be there anymore. So it is, everyone has their own journey and take on religion. And I find it's ultimately all religions are just large communities. People love community and need community, and ultimately they're all kind of saying the same thing, but in different ways. And the fact that they've caused major wars throughout time is just like, okay.
It's so weird because people who belong to every major religion think that their religion is mostly not problematic, but definitely each major religion has caused maybe even millions of deaths. So also, human beings are drawn to ritual, period. And the psychological response we have to ritual, whether it's religious or something else, is kind of the same. I have had deep spiritual experiences as a part of ritual that wasn't attached to a religion, that felt like some of the religious experiences I had growing up. And the reality is, it's not which ritual, is whether or not there is ritual. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, which kind of deflates how important any one religion is to me as well.
Yeah. I mean, but I don't know why this is coming to mind, but like I have a lot of backyard gatherings, fun, hangs.
Thanks for inviting me.
Well, now you're going to be invited. Stay tuned.
All right. Yes.
But I went to a friend's house the other month and it was another backyard hang, but there was a little ceremonial aspect to it where it was just some guidance, let's do this with intention. Let's think about why we're doing X, Y, Z. And just that little bit of extra, I don't know, like moment of pause and really reflection felt like, holy shit, like this is seemingly so powerful.
Yeah.
And we're really not doing we're not really doing anything different versus like a standard get together.
Yeah.
There's just like moment of really like why. It's almost like saying, I mean, I don't say grace at meals, but like just that let's pause and reflect on something positive, like is healing in a way.
Yeah. I went to Fire Island once this year and we was in somebody else's house share who somebody else couldn't go. And they, every night at dinner, they don't quite say grace. They do a couple of lines of lyrics from Anything Goes, which is a nice ritual. But I think being drawn to ritual is also why shows like Survivor, or any competition reality show we're drawn to. The drama is something we're drawn to, but also there's a very specific, repeatable, entrenched ritual to all of those competition shows, The Bachelorette and even Drag Race, that we are drawn to. And I think people are more drawn to it for that reason than they realize.
You know how the queer culture, something that was interesting while I was coming out, and maybe I don't think this is just an LA thing, but there are a lot of people and they're very solid cliques, and it's talk about like these like mini communities. And I am one that I have a lot of friends, but not necessarily that like core group that does every single thing together.
Yeah.
How has your experience been with those types of kind of like boxed communities within the queer community?
In my mid-20s, I had a personal trainer who told me that if I wanted to see my abs, I should quit drinking for a month. And I still haven't seen my abs. But that became not drinking for several years. And drinking, I think, for most gay men is kind of the primary social conduit. And I know gays my age now, many of the people they're still closest to are people that they partied with, even if neither of them are partiers anymore. So I kind of feel like I missed out on that. So basically all through my 20s and 30s, most of my closest bonds have been with straight people. Most to this day, with the exception of one newer group of people to my life, I mostly have my deepest connections with gay people or straight people in LA. Having said that, I started building a life in DC and New York more recently in my life. And so almost all of my social connections, including the deepest relationships, which aren't that deep, but which are deep to some level in DC, are gay. And it's maybe 50-50 or 60-40 on the gay side in New York. So I do more gay shit in those cities than I do here. Like, I could tell you about every single gay bar in Washington, D.C. I can never tell you about which bars are still open in West Hollywood. You know, I don't even know what they're all called.
DC is also a surprisingly super gay city.
It's super gay, and it's so it's funny when people think about DC, like when Republicans are in power, thinking of DC as a conservative place. It really isn't, because there's that's disproportionately gay, queer. It's disproportionately black. Even when Republicans control Congress and the White House, and you know all the staffers that come with that, there's still so many gay people, still so many black people, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah,
it's like it feels like an oasis to me in a way.
Well, did you just see the Charlie Kirk memorial?
I didn't watch it.
No, not the actual thing.
No,
that Sniffies and like
Grindr, like yes,
broke.
Yes. If you spend time on Grindr in Washington, D.C., you will see profiles that say I'm a conservative, and you will also get DMs from people who don't say that on their profile, but sooner or later they say, by the way, I'm a Republican. Is that a problem? It's like that's just part of what you expect to happen if you live in D.C.
We need Grindr to just release this information. It's like, when is that happening? Because it's ridiculous. You can't.
I think there are things about Grindr that are not so great, but there are also things about it that I think are unique in that, like, I open Grindr anywhere I go where I'm not, any place where I'm not normally. Not necessarily because I'm trying to find somebody to hook up with, but because it's such a cool social experiment. And so if I had gone to Charlie Kirk's memorial, I would totally have opened Grindr. Not necessarily to find someone I wanted to connect with. Maybe I would, sexually or otherwise. But it's also just a anthropological, I hope I'm using that word right, I don't have a college degree, experiment to see who else is there. In fact, anytime I'm in a mixed orientation setting and I'm curious about whether or not someone is gay, I'll open Grindr to see if that person's also on there, because I don't necessarily want to go up to every potentially gay person I see and go, hey, by the way, you a homosexual? You queer? What are you? So
what I've noticed, I want to know your thoughts on this. Being in LA on Grindr versus being in New York / the Northeast, do you notice a difference? I mean, maybe not DC specifically, but like...
Yes. And I don't know. I think there are two reasons, and I don't know how much of each it is. But one is every town in America sends their prettiest boy and girl to LA when they graduate from high school every year. You know, the Overton window of attractiveness is just impossible for any human. And that's even when we mean well. That's the context we live in LA. Nowhere else in the country is like that, even in New York. But I also think there's something exciting about a person who's visiting. You know, so wherever I am that I open Grindr, I'm getting more traction just because I'm visiting.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So I don't know how much of each it is, but it's definitely both of those things.
I feel like New York, the Northeast, and I've said this before, is a little bit more DL on Grindr versus LA.
It's interesting you say that. I find that when I'm in the city proper, in either of those places where I spend a lot of time, less so. But when I go outside the city proper, the further out, it's like there are degrees of DL, and it gets more and more DL the further away you get from the urban center, which is wild to me. In fact, New York City has a social makeup overall that is just unique to the city. And when you go to the suburbs in New York and New Jersey and all those places, then you are all of a sudden around people whose families have been there for generations. It's like night and day. It's wild to me.
What's your feeling, and this is more just because I'm grappling with it, when you see a closeted DL man that has a wife and kids on Grindr that wants to hook up, what's your feelings on it?
I don't judge people who are in open relationships or have permission or whatever. I know some people do. Whatever. We are not, I like to talk about us as a species a lot. I have a very Doctor Who attitude about the human race.
Yeah.
We are not designed for monogamy anyway. And we are also not designed for binary orientation or identity either. Everybody exists somewhere on the Kinsey scale, and almost nobody is on the far end. I am, but almost nobody is. So, I think there are people for whom what works the best is maybe they're sleeping around with the opposite, with the same sex as outside of their marriage, but it's in a contained way that is responsible for their spouse's sexual health and all those things like that. I guess I can see a world where that is the best solution for all involved. But I also think if you're out there with permission, I do it. I mean, most marriages, to my understanding, experience some kind of adultery. And so being attached to strict monogamy is not really a practical thing anyway. But I think if you're out there, if you're married to a woman and you're out there trying to have sex with men, as long as you're being responsible about it, I can't, it's not my business.
Yeah. I've come across that recently on some apps, and I'm super anti-cheating. I've been cheated on. It sucks. I see that monogamy is it's not an easy thing. There is something in my brain, I'm not saying this is right, but it's like, oh, he's married to a woman, but he's with a man. It's almost like not cheating, but it is. You're lying, you're sneaking around, like it has all the negative things.
Yeah, but you're getting something your wife couldn't provide.
Right. It's a different.
I know people put a lot of emphasis on the discipline of monogamy as a commitment to the relationship, but I also, most the happiest gay couples I know are in open relationships. And I think there may be a discipline that honors marriage for monogamy, but there's also a discipline required for maintaining an ethically open relationship. Yeah. I think either of those things can be true.
Yeah. Shifting gears just a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about the Stonewall Network.
So I founded Stonewall Network because going back to when I was an advisor to the Biden campaign, it turns out I know more about local LGBTQ grassroots advocacy groups than anybody else. Like both the Biden campaign in 2020 and the Harris campaign in 2024, and the DNC generally, they work off my list. What I've found is I've been doing grassroots politics for like 15 years, and whereas Republicans have institutional perpetuity, like they have churches and they have, there's an established structure that maintains organizing people that Democrats just don't have. And so what Democrats do every election, every cycle, they find volunteers, build up a volume of volunteers, engage those volunteers, and whenever the election is over, whether they win or lose, that engagement goes away. And so then if they run again or anybody else running has to start from scratch over and over and over again. Most people who care about what's happening in politics never volunteer an hour in their life. My job is to create an enduring infrastructure for engaging and keeping engaged LGBTQ people and our allies, because we need to be engaged in every election, at every level, at every cycle, if we want the world to be a safer and more accepting place for us and the people who come after us. We are nowhere near a majority of Americans. We are a minority, and if you take us and every other minority group, we barely add up to 50%. Like, we all need to be engaged all the time. But my job is to make it as easy as possible to engage as many LGBTQ people as possible and give those LGBTQ people a perennial, evergreen way to find a way to volunteer, if that makes sense. So that's what Stonewall Network does. I founded it right as the last presidential cycle was gearing up in early 2024, and it turned out that raising money for anybody other than Kamala Harris was not really a thing that was going to work. So I'm at a seed stage more now than I wanted to be, but between the Harris campaign raising like $1 billion and everybody else struggling, also like HRC and all the those organizations had to lay off people. Everybody's suffering in this category. And now I have a political nonprofit that is focused on LGBTQ people, which the government is coming for, all of us. And people who donate to keep these organizations alive have only just started donating again in the last several months. After the election, everybody who was a money person in politics was like, I don't know who I had to get my money to because we gave all this money and it didn't get any results, So I am I would say I'm in a rebuilding stage, but it's not like I got far with money in the first place. So I'm in a building stage still when I didn't expect to be. But there's still, even though some donating is happening, there's still kind of an agita around giving to LGBTQ causes or candidates or whatever on the part of individuals, but especially corporations and organizations like mine, like HRC, et cetera, rely heavily on corporate donors, and they won't touch us.
What advice would you give listeners who are those that you're describing, want to be involved, don't know how? What's the first step?
The onus is on you to figure out where to plug yourself in. And when you think you figured it out and you try to plug yourself in, it doesn't work out, the onus is on you to figure out what your next approach is. But having said that, that makes it sound hard. It isn't necessarily hard. Everywhere in America, there are, you can either volunteer locally or do something virtual, like phone banking, stuff like that. That's a thing that's always available. And so I encourage people to seek out LGBTQ candidates. I'm also on the campaign board of the LGBTQ Victory Fund, and we exclusively endorse and help fund LGBTQ candidates. So you can always go to Victory Fund and see who we've endorsed to find LGBTQ candidates to support. In most places, there's a kind of a gaggle of local grassroots advocacy groups. There'll be like a Stonewall Democratic Club of Sacramento or whatever. But other Democratic clubs and stuff like that, and indivisible groups. It's a project, an ongoing project to find how you plug yourself in wherever you live. But know that it is a marathon, not a sprint, A. And B, any struggle or challenge or pushback or lack of feeling respected or whatever that you experience is not about you. You are not here to feel gratified or validated or appreciated. Hopefully you will. Usually you will. But if not, it's not about you. It's about the cause. So I encourage people to be less precious about how they get treated. Like, I know people who are running for office and they get offended when an organization doesn't endorse them, but that candidate didn't make an effort to find out how that endorsement process worked. Same thing with volunteering. Your job is to figure out how to make it happen and keep doing it so far as you're able and not make it about you. That's me being stern. Really, truly, it's not that big of a deal. Just keep looking until you find something.
Yeah. And maybe this came to mind. Find a friend, get your bestie, do it together. So it's less scary alone.
Absolutely. Calling your member of Congress sounds scary until you do it once. And then it's like, because for them, it's like clockwork. So, whatever it is that you are, if you're talking about it with people and concerned or whatever, which things would be different, whatever, insert yourself. If the outcome turns out to be something I don't want, will I be able to say I did whatever I could?
Very powerful.
I'm not saying reinvent your whole life to volunteer, but do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this leads to a fun little game of rapid fire questions.
I love a game.
Here we go. First protest or political action you ever joined?
In 2004, the night before the general election, I was still in East Tennessee, and I and all the other people who were volunteering for the Kerry campaign went and took all the yard signs that no one had used. There were thousands of them, and we littered my hometown with them, put them everywhere. That was the first out in the world thing that I had ever done. And I had a car that was easy to put stuff in the trunk with, so I was one of the main cars, and we like major roads, we lined them with Kerry signs.
Amazing.
Isn't that fun?
That is really fun. Dream guest you'd love to interview?
I would really like to, right now, I would really like to talk to Kamala Harris. Not in the way that most people would, I think, but more because I want to know what's really going on in there, which is something we rarely see with somebody so high profile. And I'm not going to read her book. That's not the kind of stuff I want to know. I want to know more deeply what motivates her. Who is she? So that's who I'd say right now.
Mm-hmm. Queer anthem that gets you fired up?
Several of Lady Gaga's songs, because they implicitly or explicitly have, queer stuff woven into them. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if I could pick one. Mm-hmm. Also, Jerry Halliwell, Ginger Spice, in her solo career, released a song called Gay, which is about a bar called Gay in London, but it's a gay anthem. Yeah. It's like the gayest thing a Spice Girls have ever done, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And I do pull that up sometimes.
Wasn't there rumors that two of them were together?
Yes. Ginger and Scary.
Yeah.
Scary has confirmed that it happened, and Jerry was upset about that when she did, but they are still friends.
Oh, that's good.
I am a Spice Girls historian.
Are any of them out openly now?
I think
Or in
no.
queer
I think that
relationships?
I think that none of them would be hiding it. I think Mel B, Scary Spice, is just openly sometimes, having fun with chicks.
What's your favorite social platform for connecting with community?
Instagram.
Instagram. Emoji you use the most?
I like the little emoji, the melting one. It's
Yeah.
like, this is not working out to the point that my structure isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
I love that one.
Yeah, I love that one too. Celebrity crush growing up?
I definitely had a crush on Robbie Williams, Ricky Martin.
Same.
Those are the two.
Ricky Martin has gotten hotter with age.
Yes, it's so rude of him to do that. By the
He's
way,
at his prime right
he
now.
is. He is. Also, his ex, also really hot for his age.
Yes.
I'm like, guys, now that you're not together, call me. You
Right.
know,
Or together call
or
me.
call me. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yes. And then favorite affirmation or mantra you live by?
That one of them is, it's not about you. There's a scene in Doctor Strange. This is a thing that's been important to me for years, but I was surprised when I saw Doctor Strange, and there's a moment right before Tilda Swinton's character, dies or whatever, I guess, where the two of them are having a conversation. She says, after all, so I'm paraphrasing, after all this, you still haven't learned the most important lesson. And he goes, what is it? And she says, it's not about you. And for his character to realize it's not about him is kind of what that means to me. It's not about me. However I feel, however it impacts me, affects me, it's not about me.
It's so freeing too.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And then lastly, we have a segment called My First Time.
Okay.
So it's kind of if you want to share your first queer crush, queer kiss, queer sexual experience, something that was memorable.
My first sexual experience was somebody who almost immediately broke my heart. And I still think about him. I remember his name, but I've Googled him and I can't find him. I don't know if he goes by a different name now. Maybe he's dead. I don't know. That was kind of a hard lesson in how I attach myself to people. We all have an attachment style, and everybody attaches to some extent. But he was that was an awakening moment for me, and he was really hot. And when he kind of cut me off out of his life relatively shortly thereafter, that was really, really hard. But now, it's not that I wouldn't be brokenhearted if something like somebody I was really into, ghosted me today. I probably would be to an extent. But those experiences are part of being human. And the more you're exposed to them, the less of a consequential event they are. And, I'm so woo-woo now that when I feel that way, I'm like, let's explore this piece of me. I don't get to see me like this very often. Mm-hmm. I wonder what I can learn about myself while I'm feeling this way, because I'm just going to feel this way for a minute anyway. Mm-hmm. Now in dating, it's still something I'm really working on. I've been single for a long time, in part because for this reason. But that's a place that I know I can grow. It's something I know I have control over. I can choose to lean into whatever about things in my life might lead to negative feelings if they don't go my way, as an opportunity to experience life, an opportunity to improve myself, I guess, but also an opportunity to know myself better. Nobody on their deathbed ever said, I wish I'd had less sex with fewer people. So that's a joke, kind of, but that's true for all the things. Nobody on their deathbed ever said, I wish I had my heart broken less. I wish I had been let down less. That's not what people think about at the end of their life. And often people at the end of their life think, man, if only I had been held back less by those fears, I would have lived more of life. Mm-hmm. So that's
really
my goal. I'm thinking about me on my deathbed 100 years from now.
Yeah.
What will he have to say?
Well, Ryan, thank you so much. Where can people find you on social media?
Thank you. I am on all the socials media at Ryan Basham, but Instagram is my main thing. I have yet to crack the code on TikTok, so Instagram's where it's at for me.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And baby gays, remember, coming out looks good on you.
Yes, always.
Yes. Yay. Thank
Yay,
you so much, Ryan.
Thank you.